Hello everybody, welcome back to JerBee Apiary. It's hive inspection day and it is probably going to be about 90 degrees today. It was 90 degrees yesterday, and yes, this is upstate New York 2.5 weeks after it was snowing. On to the first hive. Did the normal start off by moving things around and checking each of the frames. I started with the frames furthest away from the entrance and there really wasn't much going on any of those. Then I moved on to the sugar water feeder, which needed completely refilled. Obviously there it's where the bees started, as you can see in the video. The first frame after that had a lot of activity, and I was really surprised by how heavy the comb actually had become, and also with the weight of the bees. It's difficult to see on here, but the top of the comb, inside of those cells, there is nectar being stored, which will eventually be honey. Moving on to the third frame from the entrance, or from the very beginning of the hive, and here there are actually cells with brood in it that are capped, and nectar up top. I'll show you more of that later. This is a really big frame. This one was very heavy and has a lot going on. There are a lot of things here. For instance, the queen is crawling around on this frame. Did you see her? I thought that might make it a little bit easier. I want to take some time to show you what's going on here. There are these little U-shaped things inside of some of those cells. That is brood. Those are larvae. That is the larval form of baby bees, with some of them having a yellow wax roof over their cell. At this point, it was time to stop playing with the baby bees and check the last frame, which also was fairly busy, but not to the full extent that that was. And then it was time to close everything up. And the final thing that I did before closing it up was rearrange where the feeder was, while still reveling and seeing brood for the very first time. Similar to the first hive, the second hive really didn't have much in the first few frames, starting in the back. I rearranged where the sugar water was stored and filled that up before moving on to the true inspection. First frame of bees had a lot of activity and they were building some comb, but not a lot of comb drawn out yet. On to the next one, which had a little bit more in the way of comb being drawn out, but also had the queen, which was a lot easier to spot because of that handy blue dot. Always the hive of surprises, this next comb had some abnormalities on it from where the queen cage was, I suspect, with that little bit of an area sticking out. I was getting a little bit concerned that there wasn't going to be any brood on these frames in this hive until I got to the next one, which definitely had a lot of capped brood. If you look really hard, you might find a few larvae in there that aren't capped. This comb is illustrating how they are storing nectar up top with the brood more towards the center and bottom, which is kind of typical. And eventually that will be honey up top. The next frame had this interesting hole in it. I don't know why it's there, I don't know what they're using it for, but they definitely made it themselves. Maybe it's for ventilation, maybe they just like it. But certainly continues the tradition of the surprise hive, from building off of the feeder to these strange holes and everything else. It's really interesting seeing the variability between the two different hives. We have one hive that seems regular and orderly, and we have another one that's more scattered and has random variants all throughout it. Hive 2 seems to get up a little bit later and work later in the day, but also seems to be just a touch behind in development compared to the first one, or it's just more scattered. Well, that was kind of an interesting hive inspection. I'm excited that we have brood already going in Hive 1.
Hive 2 seems to be lagging behind. Hopefully things will pick back up. I'll check on it again here in another week. Keep feeding sugar water until then, especially with that hive being behind. And maybe consult a few friends and see if they know what's going on or if this is par for the course.
Since breaking that comb off of the bottom of the plastic feeder, I've had a number of requests for some photos or to talk about that comb. So this is that comb. This is a freestanding comb with no foundation because they built it off of the plastic bin. And you can see the cells are overlapping the back to the front, which I think is really neat to see with the sunlight shining behind it. It is completely waxy, like beeswax, as you would expect. And new beeswax is light in color, not yellow. It darkens as it ages. Hopefully you all enjoyed this. Until next time.